Hi, everybody. This is information session number 8, our bi-weekly session for the community of teams that are competing on the Metaverse for SDGs Global Prize and Virtuality Competition. So some exciting updates this bi-weekly session. First of all, we are literally at 700 teams. So we just passed the 700 mark today. So we're really excited that the community is growing. That's over, I think the count now is 65 different countries. And we have some real exciting activity going on in states like Nebraska and Wyoming in the United States, but also in many of the countries in Africa. We just had a conversation with a big group out of Guatemala. So there's a lot of really fun activity, and we're glad that everyone is using this opportunity to learn these new skill sets and then apply what they're learning into this, one of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So with that said, today is going to be a very exciting session. On this call with me, I have some of my colleagues that are some of the original founders and leadership team at Exponential Destiny. Why don't Sam, just for everybody, why don't you and then Zach and Pablo just introduce yourselves real quickly, your age, your role at Exponential Destiny, and then we'll move on and we'll go through each of you real quick. Go ahead, Sam.
Hello, everyone. This is Samantha again. I am 22 and I'm the Chief Design Officer at Exponential Destiny.
Zach.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Shingles. I'm 25 and I do most of our platform relationships at Exponential Destiny. I also do a lot of the training, which we'll see some today.
Pablo.
Hey everybody, I'm Pablo. I'm the CTO at Exponential Destiny. So I handle a lot of the tech side, with Zach, and I am 20 years old from South Central.
Yep, and Pablo and Samantha are from Los Angeles, and Zach is in Michigan. Okay, so with that, the context for this discussion is we wanted to give you guys some more advanced training and exposure to some of the more advanced features in one of the platforms in particular, which is the Engage VR platform. Now, if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see that information session number 3, remember this is information session number 8, but session number 3, which we had, a few months ago now, we had a special guest. His name was Chris Madsen, and Chris Madsen is an executive at the Engage platform. This is a metaverse platform, one of the more popular ones. And he gave a tutorial on information session number 3, where he went through really some of the basics, like what is the Engage platform? How do you get access to it? When you get in there, what superpowers do you have? How can you create environments and create stories and create scenes? And you should really watch information session number 3 on our YouTube channel. And maybe Sam, you can post the YouTube channel link for everybody. But you should really watch that session because it's going to give you some of the orientation, because this session, we're going to work with Zach and Pablo here to actually go a step further into some more advanced features within Engage. Now, again, at Exponential Destiny, we're platform neutral. We recommend and suggest that you learn multiple platforms. We use multiple platforms, but we definitely have identified some that we think are most conducive for the work that we do. You'll see us talk about Engage a lot, quite frankly, because it was education-based platform when it was initiated. So it has a lot of advanced features that let a teacher take it into a classroom and do testing and grading and so forth. And then we also like it because it has some advanced features we're going to talk about today in particular that you won't find in other platforms, that we think for the purposes of creating stories and telling stories and building empathy, awareness, and education around a sustainable development goal, you're going to really value some of the features we share about today. I get excited about it because when I started to see some of these advanced features in the Engage platform, and I imagine all the platforms will eventually have this feature, I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, this is a new art form. It's a new creative expression and a new art form. And I know that sounds a little bit rambunctious to make that statement, but I think you'll see when we talk through this that this feature that we're going to discuss today, the ability to record animated objects as you manipulate those objects and record what they do, and then replay those recordings back to your audience at a later time, and even put recordings within recordings, it becomes like creating theater. It's like stage production. You get a bunch of actors, and the nice thing is you can be self-sufficient. You can be the actor that pops into an avatar of a dolphin or a celebrity or a person or what have you, and you can animate and create all the stage production and have all these roles and all these actors doing different things and moving them around. And then all that animation can come together and be edited to make a whole story and make, you know, all these special effects that come out, wind and rain and lightning, and it's just pretty extraordinary. And Chris Mattson highlighted this a little bit in the first session we had, information session number 3, which again, watch that on YouTube. And today we're going to get into the content creator and some of the features and functions behind this to produce these capabilities. Now, again, this won't require you to write any programming code. So you don't have to learn a programming language, which we think is a real plus here, because you can basically do anything your imagination comes up with, and you won't have to write code. That's how, because Engage, the platform itself has written all the code to let you as a user come in and make it happen, right? But it does require some more advanced skill sets. And so for some of you that kind of like to get a little more technical and like to get into advanced features and explore the software and the platforms a little more, this information session is going to be for you. I'd also suggest that this feature of doing this recording is probably going to separate the winners from losers when it comes to, or I shouldn't say losers, the winners from, it's going to separate good to great in this competition, because it gives you such an ability to tell a story in creative ways when you can animate things around people and stage these productions, that I think it's a really great skill set to learn. And the fact of the matter is, I think Pablo and Zach, you'd probably agree, Samantha, once you learn it, it's not rocket science. It's not that complicated. It really isn't. It's just a matter of getting over the fear that it's complicated. It's pretty basic. For those of you that have used PowerPoint and you created animation in PowerPoint, we can actually line up, you know, this object comes in PowerPoint and then fades out, and then this object comes in and moves around and fades out. And, you know, it's a little bit of that, but in 3D, and probably not that much more complicated than what you do in PowerPoint with that animator, if you ever got in some of those advanced features in PowerPoint. So we're not going to, this is not an all-inclusive training. This is kind of scratching the surface, but it'll be very helpful. And Zach has put together some additional content that we're going to post on our site that even gets into a little bit more of a tutorial. So it'll be a very valuable resource, and this will be posted on our site. So with that said, I want to kind of open it up and maybe turn it over to Zach. And I guess, Zach, the first question is for people that are tuning in for the first time, or, you know, even if they watch the information session number 3 with Chris Mattson and Engage, maybe you could take us back to square one. Like, can you, perhaps even sharing your screen, can you show us, like, once you get into the Engage platform on your desktop or in virtual reality, like, what do you see? And then what do you see that gets you into this content creator? Like, how do you access this thing? You're on mute.
Yep, sorry, I was unmuting. So once you get into Engage, you should see a menu similar to this. The only exception being this picture will be whatever group you are a part of. And you've got various options. In order to get to the content creator, you want to go to create and edit. And you can do this both on your PC, your Mac, or your headset. So once we go into create and edit, you'll have an option for creating forms, which we'll talk about later. It's basically adding quizzes or tests that you can drop into your experiences. But you want to go to content creator, and you want to go to either new or load scenes. So we'll go to new. And once you've gone into a new scene, you'll have to choose a location. Now, choose wisely, because everything you create in that content is going to be restricted to that location. Now, your experience could be more than one content creation, and you just, maybe there's a part 1, part 2. So don't feel limited to one location, but be aware that you'll have to load to the next location if you want to change.
And just to clarify, what Zach has pulled up here in your content creator is the Engage platform is giving you access to different environments and scenes. So if you were to click Martian surface down on the bottom right, you'll be on the planet Mars, and you'll have a virtual reality experience all with the planet Mars. They have created these environments for you. That's a big plus. And notice they have hundreds in here. So anything you're imagining, I mean, you can start from scratch and create your site yourself. You can put grass and texture and objects into your own site, but Engage gives you hundreds of different scenes to start with. So if you're picking a sustainable development goal, and let's say it's life below water, which is one of the SDGs, I think it's, what is it, SDG number 7, I think, you could actually pick a scene where you're in an ocean, for example, right? So what you're looking at is kind of the robustness of this particular platform, Engage, where for free, they're giving you all these different scenes, and some of them they're very high quality resolution. Now, 5 years ago, you'd have to go get a graphic designer and build this yourself and spend money on that. Now, you see a lot of platforms like Engage and others that give you these out of the box templates to work with. So that's what you're talking about. What Zach is referring to is once you get into one of these environments, he's going to show you how you can create content in those environments and animate the content. And you want to make sure if you're going to animate a scene, you should do it within in one of these environments. It's hard to switch after you've started to create it in one of these environments because you're going to move around the objects in those environments. So anyways, I'll turn it back to you, Zach.
Yeah, and because it's hard to change it halfway through, you can just create multiple experiences and start one with one location, another with a separate location. But something that I like to do is just blank canvas. And so there is a creator blank location that also allows you to play 4K 360 videos as the background, or you can add your own skybox. But this blank template is really the choice that I go to, because then I can bring in custom environments and just have it change throughout my timeline. And so as you see it, it almost looks like just a void, and you can't really tell where the ground is or where the sky ends until you bring something in.
So Zach, maybe you'll create an animation and then put it into another environment to show people how you create something in this blank template, but then you pull it into some other area.
You want me to bring in an animation?
No, I guess what I'm
create
asking,
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you ask the question again?
No, I'm saying you're in a blank environment, one that's somewhat of a void other than clouds. You just put that grass in yourself, right?
Mhm.
Okay. But what you're telling people is you picked a blank space to add your own grass and things versus picking a space that already had an environment created. When you show how to animate things within this environment, is if that's what we're going to do right now, you're going to actually animate and show how to use the animation capability. And then you can bring that into other environments as well.
So that's not actually how it works. If I were to create an animation within this content, I would not be able to take it and bring it somewhere else. And so something that I suggest to people who are going to be creating, animations, objects, groups of objects, do that outside of the content creator. And there are ways that you can save it and then bring it to any content you want. But when you create something, sorry.
No, I said just then go ahead and proceed with this one then.
Okay, so I do want to mention that you are free floating. So I put the grass here more as a reference. You are just floating, so you can fly around, so you can edit better. And you use the escape button on a computer to pull up your timeline. And so the first thing you want to do before you start building is you want to make sure that you save your timeline as a correct name. One thing you'll notice is I have a name in here. It puts the name of the last, this is very important. It puts the name of your last project in. And so if you accidentally save, it will overwrite your previous project in a completely blank environment. So it can be very scary if you don't change those things right off the bat. Because they will just name it the exact same name as your last experience. Another thing before you get started is you'll notice that there's a length, 5 minutes. That means that after the 5 minutes are done, your experience will just end and it will kick people out. So I typically change that to 20 to give myself breathing space. And this will make sense in a moment when I show you the timeline. So I'm going to do those two things and I'm going to save.
And Zach, when you say you have a timeline, can you explain to people who don't know what a timeline is, and why would this software even have a timeline?
Yeah, so in order to bring life to an experience, you really want things to be moving down a timeline. If you were to just bring in, say, have a blank room and add a bunch of static items that just stay still and they're there the whole time, then, I mean, you have a space for sure, but that space is really just a glorified PowerPoint in a way where, or maybe a meeting space. And what you want to build for this competition is more than just a meeting space where you maybe see interesting things and read different facts. This allows you to create a narrative very easily by, when you start out, someone loads up this content, they start at 0 seconds. And so you can have different things happening during different intervals of that timeline, just like a video has a timeline, just like.
So I guess to clarify, when I am a user and I go into this space that you created for me, you'll be able to trigger this timeline to start. It could be triggered automatically when I walk into this space virtually. It could be triggered based on some action, like I walk close to some object and then it triggers it. So there's some trigger that starts this timeline. When this timeline starts, this is basically the user interface that Zach is going to use that tells the computer in the virtual reality environment what objects to show and what to do with those objects in a particular sequential order as I, as a user, get to experience it. So this is what I mean by making theater. Just like when you go to a theater, you walk into a theater, the stage goes up, the curtains part, and all of a sudden these actors come out on stage and they go through a whole production on a timeline. That's what Zach is showing you. How do you take different objects, any objects you want, could be a house, could be a dolphin, could be rain, could be thunder, and have that object do something sequential to other objects. And then if you can see what's happening here, you basically can tell a whole story because you can basically produce this theater. You want to describe what's happening, Zach?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to just have this object move down the timeline. Currently, it is just stagnant. It doesn't move. It just exists for this amount of time. About 3 minutes is what it's on for. Now, there's an option to record Puppet, where if you click on it, I'm able to move it through the experience. Now, I'm doing this on a desktop, which if you were to record something, you would want to do it on your headset so that it looks natural, because using a mouse doesn't do this justice. But now that I've had him walk in a circle, I'm gonna zoom in on my timeline. And now you can see I have the elephant. I hit play. Sorry, move that. Let's find our elephant.
So what you're seeing here is Zach took the elephant from a group of objects that the software gives you available. He could have picked a dolphin, a giraffe, a tree. He picked an elephant. He brought that elephant in, and then he used this special feature that said record puppet to almost like we call it puppeteering, where you could actually make that object move around, and anything you do with that object to make it move around is being recorded, and then you can play it later. And then it will be just the recording of what you had that object move around and do. And you can see he's now put a hippo. So you can see the timeline here. It's a very intuitive user interface. It shows you the elephant for 15 seconds. It shows you he put in this hippo, and he can keep manipulating these objects to do things. He can have the elephant attack the hippo if he wanted to, and then have that recorded, and then play that back in this timeline. Remember, he's pre-staging all of this. He's producing all this like making a theater. It's like practicing with a bunch of actors. He's having all the actors play their parts, but then he's going to put it all together eventually when you as a user come in and experience it all. And what Zach was describing was he's currently doing this all from a desktop, so he doesn't need a headset to do this. He's doing this from the desktop. However, when you're in virtual reality, it's a little easier to animate these objects because you can see them walking around you and you can manipulate them so they move in a more natural way. It's much easier to manipulate them so they have smooth, you know, when they go around in a circle, it's a very smooth circle. It's not like jarred like you're doing it with your keystrokes on your computer. So it is easier to manipulate these objects if you're going to puppeteer them, to do that puppeteering actually in virtual reality versus on the desktop. But he's doing it on the desktop right now just to show you.
Yeah, so using the desktop versus the headset is actually a strategic way of just getting things set up. It's definitely easier to place things on your timeline, set them to the exact time you want, the exact like position on the timeline, and do all of this sort of settings, which I'll kind of show off some settings too. But for the actual animations of objects, it's impossible to do it without being in headset. You have to, unless it is a simple animation where they were going from maybe point A to point B. But if you have an elephant circling you, like Marcus said, you need it to be smooth. You'll have to go in and do it with your headset, or yeah. And so Marcus had also mentioned, say, maybe have the hippo or the elephant attack each other or do some sort of action. You see Engage already has some animations in here where the hippo is just doing various things. Right now it's grazing, it was attacking. I can force it to do specific animations by using going into the settings. And I mean, that's as simple as clicking on it on the timeline. I click on hippo. There's an IFX options button. So I click on that. And then I have an animation overrides. And any object that's animated like this from their library is probably going to have an override with various different types: walk, bite, death, get hit.
Oh, that's cool. So what you're saying is Engage gives you this hippo, and this hippo by default, when you put him in your space, will shake his head left to right, will show his jaws and bring his mouth open. He'll walk a little bit, but you're saying you can actually go in. If you don't want the hippo to do those 3 or 4 activities all in a row, you can say, I just want this hippo to act like it's rearing its head and opening up its jaw, like it's about to act.
Exactly. I can go down to the very frame or a very second that I want it to start and end an animation, and I can add as many animations as I want.
Wow, that's cool. So I mean, this is the advantage with Engage platform, because you don't see this, quite frankly, in a lot of the platforms yet. Engage this is one of the reasons we like this particular one, because, you know, not only does do the objects, think about what's happening here. First of all, you have a hippo that you were able to pull in right from the platform. You didn't have to go out to TurboSquid or some third-party website and pay for a hippo and bring it in. Engage already had a hippo, and they had hundreds of other animals and thousands of objects. I think they have 1,200. So that's the first thing, is you already have the object easily accessible. You can bring it right in. Once you bring it in, and it's already got some preconditioned animation that it does, but you can change that if you want to, like Zach is showing you. And then third, you're bringing that hippo in and you're making it, you're going to actually manipulate the hippo to do things that you want it to do. You know, jump into the water or walk around or do it, you know, leap off a cliff, whatever you want this thing to do. Zach can animate it to do that, and then put in this animation with other animated objects in this timeline.
Yeah, and one extra thing to when I puppeteer things, you don't always have to puppeteer things. If it's something as simple as I want this hippo to move in a straight line from point A to B, or I want him to grow larger, but I want it to just be a very simple growth, very natural and consistent. So it's not shaky as much as it's just point A to B at a solid rate. You can go in, let me click on him. I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you can see these. You can set every single frame to be exactly where you want it to be. And so for those who don't know what a frame is, Engage runs at what's called 30 frames per second. And so for every second that happens in the timeline, you can go in and get a frame, and there's 30 frames between each second. So these little notches, each one of those is a frame.
So maybe what we could do, Zach, just to show people a very simple animation, why don't we tell a story? And this is what we mean by storytelling. And as you know, you heard from another video, I think it was information session number 2, Samantha and others, we talked about design thinking and persona mapping and telling a story. Go back and listen to some of those others about how do you craft your story. But let's say in this story, I mean, this is not specific to a sustainable development goal. So you're gonna have to put it into a story of your SDG. But for fun, let's say, Zach, the story we want to show for someone to experience is we have this elephant that's grazing. Let's say the hippo then comes up to the elephant. The hippo gets aggressive and the elephant then grows 5 times larger and then the hippo runs away. Let's say that's our story. Now, we thought of that on the spot. You guys have to really get with your team and map out your story around your sustainable development goal. But you see what we're talking about here is we're talking about how do we communicate some message and story and then bring that to life around the sustainable development goal. So maybe Zach, do you want to wing that and just create something real quick to show people how you can create that story, in a matter of 10 minutes or so, and how you were able to animate each of these actors.
Yeah, and I'll kind of go over roughly how I'm doing it. So I'm just going to start off. I'm not going to worry about where the actual floor is for the moment. I'm just going to put in.
And Zach, I guess another question for you. Do you maybe want to go into an environment that has a jungle or something already? And that way we can show people how to do that in something that already exists.
Sure, I can do that.
Now, again, Zach showed you an environment that was completely blank that you can create. But if you want, depending on your sustainable development goal, you probably can find, well, not probably, you will be able to find some pre-existing environment, either in Engage, or if you're on another platform, a lot of those platforms let you bring in environments from websites that create environments where people have posted those out there.
It is possible to do that and Engage with assistance from Engage. So I'm just going to use this area. It's nice over here. This particular environment has very good lighting too. It's very realistic. So if you use it. All right, so let's bring in our characters. We'll just do a rhino instead of a hippo because it's a little more threatening. And then we'll still do our elephant. All right, so first thing I want to do is put him where he's going to stand. All right. And I can really go in and make sure that he's exactly where I want him by using this fine tuning function. But of course, you're always going to get your best. You're always going to do the best if you just go in on headset and place things like this on headset and then mess with the timeline later. So we're going to place him. Let's have him looking backwards. The rhino can be over here. It's a pretty big rhino.
Maybe to make a scene, have the rhino out of the scene and have the rhino come up to the elephant, threaten the elephant, and then we'll make the elephant get 4 times bigger and then the rhino runs away, just as a...
Yeah, so the first thing, because the reason I have them so close is because I want to be able to see, I want to line them up and then I can move them away lined up. So
Okay, got it.
I've got him lined up. He's going to run up. This is a good spot. So now I'll hit this gizmo thing again and I'll go to translate and I can just move him away. So we'll have him over here for now. All right. So now I want to say maybe takes 5 seconds for him to walk over. I'm going to go to the rhino and I'm going to hit this function right here, which allows me to do keyframes very precisely. It's called a dope sheet. So I'm clicking on that and I'm going to, now the rhino already has a keyframe that's set because I opened up the dope sheet and that's where he is right now. I'm going to move him up here and I'm going to move the timeline to my 5 seconds. And I'm going to hit this button, which sets the key. So now, got him running over here at 5 seconds. So now we'll go and we'll edit. I'm going to put in the actual animations that they do later. I'm just going to edit the keys right now. We're going to edit the elephant now. So I'm going to go into my gizmo or my dope sheet again. And I am going to bring it to 5 seconds. Actually, let's bring it to just 5 seconds, 5.5 seconds, because we need time for the rhino to be intimidating and then a reaction. And this can all be kind of slightly moved later. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it for the moment. So I'm now going to go into that gizmo again. And I'm going to change it so I can rotate. And I'm going to change the sensitivity because that's way too fast. And so I just clicked on the rotation I wanted to use, and I'm using my scroll wheel to move it. We're going to have them turn. I think I'll do it like this, just that they aren't colliding too much. And so I'm going to hit keyframe. So let's see. All right, so I made a mistake about this, but that's fine. I'm going back to 5 seconds, and I'm now copy and paste that first keyframe, so he turns right there. It looks a little funny, I noticed, because he doesn't have any animation for that turning, but I would adjust that later, and it would take a little extra time. We're just, for the time's sake, now going to make the elephant really big. And so I'd say maybe a progression of 2 seconds to make him large. So let's go to 7 seconds on our timeline.
Maybe have him grow, like give him 5 seconds to get bigger.
5 seconds. Okay, so that's 10. It would be a little under 5 seconds. It'd be 4.5. And then we will go gizmo. And I will probably have to have the rhino back up because he's probably gonna, yeah. So how big are we thinking? This
Yeah,
big?
okay. Yeah, it doesn't
Pretty
matter.
good. I like that. Okay, so the key. And so let's go back real quick to the rhino and just make it so the rhino backs up for a little bit. Gonna want a reaction to that. So right here, I'll have him back up because I don't want them to collide. So I'm gonna set another key. I'm just gonna hit key. So this key and that key are the same.
But
That's why
and just, I know people will have to go through and get a little bit more familiar with the platform. But can you just describe what a key means? And you keep using that term.
So a key is just a mark in time of that position. So the position that he's currently in, he will be in that position at the key, and the key is set for 5 seconds. And then this key is set for about 5 seconds, like a little bit after that.
So these are like these are like
They're
markers.
markers. They're markers, yeah. But it is, the term
And
is key, and that's why it's
and
a
the-
key emblem.
And then you can see there over on the left, it says position X, position Y, position Z. So why you see these different colors is each color represents a very specific orientation of the object. So what Zach is doing is he's saying at 5 seconds in, this rhino should be here in this exact position, X position, Y position, Z position. 5 seconds later, it's in a different position. So the software will then move that object between these different keys, essentially animating the object for you.
Okay, well, we'll make him move a little bit more.
That's okay. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect for this, Zach.
Okay, all right, we'll just do that, and then it's good on him. So let's play this right now.
So Zach hit play and you can see the timeline moving forward below. Everything that Zach had programmed it to do, not programmed, but had told the system to do, it's now doing.
Yes, and so I could go in even further. I won't for time, but I could go in even further and see like, okay, where's the points where he should do an animation? I would remember that time, and then I could go into edit and add animations and have a start and end time.
You
those
also
certain
can make,
animations.
and also one of the effects of the rhino is that it rears its head, and you could have it rear its head right before the elephant grows. Right, like getting it into attack mode.
Yep.
Yep, so you can get the objects to do very specific things. You know, for the purpose of demonstration, Zach, I thought that was great. I mean, you're showing people how very quickly you were able to create, you know, we came up with this story that this rhino approaches this elephant, threatens the elephant gets 5 times bigger, and the rhino, you know, runs. We haven't made the rhino run away yet, but that'd be easy to do, right? So, you know, in a matter of 5 minutes, Zach has animated a story. He's told a story based on just what we came up with our imagination. And now think about the tool set that is here in the Engage platform. You know, there's quite a bit in here, as you can see that Zach is going through. There's these keys that let you get very precise. there's just tons of features and functionality in the software that let you manipulate this thing until it's exactly how you want it to be. Now, you might be a perfectionist like Zach is and say, well, that elephant turned around and it looked really unnatural because it just rotated 180 and it didn't move its legs. You could go fix that if you wanted to, right? So, you know, and you could have, you know, why don't you just for fun, Zach, why don't you show how when the elephant gets bigger that a bunch of clouds come in and the whole mood changes. Like this is how you create some emotion or some ambiance. You know, you can add a special effect like a lightning bolt or something. Maybe you want to add that, Zach, into this just to show how it adds another object.
Already on it. All right, so a really useful tool when in IFX is to go to this little button right here, and it gives you, it actually categories everything. And these
And you can
top
search.
filters are really useful. I'll talk about special functions before we end, but that's something you should just look at and learn and experiment with. But effects are what Marcus is talking about, and they're really cool as well.
You got tornadoes, you got a sandstorm, you got a dust cloud, you got a bullet, you got a leaves falling, you got an explosion,
So we'll use the lightning bolt.
oil rig fire. I mean, there's really just so much in this, right? There's a maybe try, yeah, there. See
Okay.
that? That's
So
pretty
now it can be a little difficult to place because the effects go for just right off. But if you use this gizmo function, it will, every time you hit the X on the gizmo, it will show off the effect. And so it's really easy to like place it then. It
Yeah,
also
by the
gives
way,
you this
I mean,
nice little circle.
This is pretty cool, even looking at it on a desktop. You got to imagine in virtual reality, I can tell you, this is really amazing because you hear 360 audio. So if the elephant or the rhino has special effects sound, you can hear that like it's around you. And then it's just, you can tell from the graphics, even on the screen, it's a very realistic, very high resolution on the screen. It's very high resolution on the headset as well.
Might be excessive.
Now he hits play. That's cool. I mean, you see what, I mean, it's just fun, right? You can create whatever you want. I mean, that's when we say anything your imagination comes up with, you can see what we mean. Like literally anything, if you're a creative person and you like to tell stories or you think you're just, you know, you're just creative thinker, there's just so much in here to do. I mean, you have 1,200 different objects to choose from, let alone hundreds of thousands of objects if you want to pull something in off the internet.
Just setting something up. We didn't mention chroma keys yet.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about the special. Now, real quickly before you move from there, Zach, what we really wanted to show everybody on this session was the fact that there's this content creator in this timeline here that lets you make this animation. And you can see this. I mean, Zach, I know you've done some animation where you've had dozens of lines in here. I know some people that have had hundreds of lines of animation in here. Like everything, every little thing is thought of. The wind blowing in the trees, the leaves falling, different sound effects. There's a whole sound effect feature that lets you add sound effects at any given location. And you can just keep layering and layering and layering these effects and these animations into each other to make just a beautiful piece of art, really an expressive art form of communication. And we think that if you apply this to a sustainable development goal, remember your objective is to build empathy, awareness, and education. Education means that you have some things in here that educate people about that sustainable development goal. Maybe so there's some charts and graphs. Maybe there's a video that you watch. You know, Zach, you can maybe throw a video in here real quick to show people how you put a video in here because you want to educate someone on something. But you also want to build awareness and empathy. And a lot of the ways you create empathy, you heard from Caitlin Krause, who's from Stanford University, who did information session number 7, Sam, was it? That Caitlin did? If you go to information session number 7, Caitlin from Stanford University, she wrote the book on how to build empathy and social and emotional learning in these environments. And that's where you can use a lot of these ambiance features, you know, special effects and other things to create that. So Zach will
So yeah,
literally
talking about videos, there's a lot of options. I mean, you can bring in 360 videos. You can bring in, I brought in a screen. You could bring in a 360 screen to play 360 videos on. there are rooms that are 360 videos. I can have it so that it loops. So say it's like maybe it's a waterfall and it is through a cave and I just want the water feature to show. I can have it looping. And I can even do spatial
Let's
volume.
stop on that one real quick, because that's an interesting one. What Zach was talking about is you could grab a video of a waterfall, like water running, but then you can take this video and stick it like into the side of that cliff, and it will actually look like there's water flowing down that cliff, even though it's really a video of water. You
Yeah,
know,
and
it's like hacking the system. You know, it's like the user won't know that it's actually a video of water that's looping.
to add to that, if that video has sound, so say the water has a sound that it's making on the video, you can set spatial audio, and then you can go up to 100 meters to from 0 to 100 meters in terms of like the radius, in which if I'm say 50 meters and I have it set to 50 meters, I'll be able to hear that water from 50 meters away, but it will get louder as I get closer.
Yeah, using the spatial audio.
Using spatial audio, yeah. So that's a pretty cool thing.
What is this, a chroma key video?
So this is a green screen video. Obviously, you can see it as a green screen. There are options to bring in screens that are called chroma keys, where it does the it takes out the green part. And so I will do that right now so that you guys can see. It's under video screens. And give me 1 sec to find it.
What basically this is, Zach is going to pull in a video. Now these videos could be a YouTube video. It could be a video you shot on your iPhone. It can be any video that you upload into this, right? And what Zach is going to show you is some of these videos, if they're filmed with a green screen behind them, it means you can remove all the greens, so the video just shows the object, and then it looks like the object's actually there in virtual reality with you, even though you're looking at a video. So it's a very easy way to bring, for example, if you wanted to bring yourself into this environment, a video of yourself, you could record a video of yourself. You can use tools like Runway. I think was it Runway?
Runway ML.
Runway
ML stands for machine learning.
RunwayML.com is a place you could take a video of yourself that you'd shot with your iPhone, and RunwayML.com will let you remove everything around the video except for the video of you. So any background, it's almost like you did it in a green screen, and then you can bring it in here, and then you'll see a video of yourself, and it'll look like a hologram of you, but it's actually a video. So what Zach is showing you now is that's a video. It's not an object. But if you're in virtual reality or if you're looking on your desktop, you can't tell that it's a video because it's always pointing towards you. The video is always pointing towards you, the screen. And then Zach used a green screen, so it removed everything around it. And therefore it looks like, it looks like a hologram of whatever this creature is.
Be bigger, please. Okay, please save. Oh, it saved. All right. Ground impact. I'm trying to get this to look cool.
If you put some special effects sounds in there, you can hear this animal screaming. And so that's a video. That's not actually an object. It's actually a video, like a YouTube video. Now, when Zach rotates around it, the video moves to always face forward, so it looks like an object. Notice how Zach is rotating around the thing. Engage has it set up to where the video is always facing you, so it actually looks like an object. So just a really easy way to get images in there of anything you think of. Again, you could use your iPhone and video something, then bring it in there.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to always face you. They have multiple options for the chroma key screen. So say you are doing a waterfall and you don't want to have to hide it, you can just put it right on the cliffside and have it so that it's not facing you. And then since it's backed against a wall, it will always look like it's just pouring water.
So Zach, maybe we'll also show people how you can create triggers. So just to orient people, if you're telling a story and you plan on having someone come into this environment to hear your story, for example, when we start doing the judging around this competition, the judges are going to have to come into your environment if you make it into the finals to actually see your environment in virtual reality. When they come into your environment, whether it's on the desktop or virtual reality, you may want some action to occur, but only when they do something. Maybe it's the trigger is when they get close in proximity in virtual reality to this object, it starts to animate. That's when it clicks this timeline. So maybe Zach, do you want to show how there's these triggers?
Yeah, sure. So I could do a button, or I could do, like you said, walk in front of something. So let me create a trigger where I don't know if I can actually trigger it while in the content creator, but as you see right here, there's like a player body trigger. So if they walk into this, I can set it so that there's multiple things. There's trigger effects. So I can set a trigger effect to have a recording play, or have an IFX show up, or a snapshot. A snapshot is just a collection, a pre-saved collection of IFX that I've created. Or I can do a couple other things like have a quiz play, but something that you can do with IFXs that also includes having a video play, or perhaps having someone move on the timeline. And that sounds confusing at the moment, but what that is say I have us over here on the timeline, and please try and follow along. So the timeline's just running, and I hit this object called skip to time, and I'm just looping. And so you can kind of have this in your timeline where you don't want anything to happen unless someone figures something out or hits a trigger. And so you can have this, what I call it a loop, and then you'd put a trigger in the loop, and the loop won't end until they hit that trigger. And that trigger will just give them another skip to time that skips them to being right in front of this dragon. And this effect goes off.
Yeah,
and so I can show that real quick if you want to see it.
Yeah, just the notion that there's these triggers. I mean, what are some of the some triggers are you have to touch an object and then something will happen that you predefine. Some
Yes.
is the one you were showing is you just walk in that proximity. If someone goes past that barrier that you put there, something will happen. And it just gives you control. It gives you control to have the story animate at certain times. And keep in mind, what Zach is showing you right now is one little section of this whole space. Zach, I don't know if you can go up in the air to show people how big that space is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
These spaces are very large within Engage. So if Zach, if you zoom out, you'll see that there's a whole campus there. I mean, there's a whole, you don't have to keep your audience in this one spot. They can go out and explore. And that's the value of virtual reality compared to a website. It's almost like going to different website pages. Here, people can literally go throughout this entire world that's in here. I mean, it's huge. You can see here. So you have a lot of room to work in as far as letting people browse this space. Now, if you had a sustainable development goal and you wanted to, you could create a whole maze here where you gamify it and people have to go on a scavenger hunt and find clues to get through your experience. Maybe that's how you educate them. And that's how you keep them entertained, is you gamify it, you make it into a game. You're not restricted to this one little corner that Zach's in currently. I mean, he's just using one little portion of it. And again, Zach pulled this image down from hundreds of different environments, this environment. So this environment of all this grass and this ancient looking place, you have hundreds to choose from just in this one platform, so you really have a lot to work with. All right, maybe Pablo, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit. I know that you've done a little work where you use LiDAR. Do you want to describe a little bit about what LiDAR is and how you use LiDAR in an environment like this? And I don't know, Zach, while he's talking, I don't know if we have any LiDAR images that from previous projects that we can pull in to show people what you can do with your iPhone or with a LiDAR-based device. But I don't know, Pablo, do you want to share a little bit of that?
Yeah, I'll chime in quickly. So LiDAR, if you guys don't know what that is or have any experience with LiDAR, if you guys have or work with the new iPhones, this little scanner back here, this component is a LiDAR scanner. So essentially what that does is it shoots beams of light out, and it times how far and how long it took for that light to bounce to an object and bounce back. And when it does that, it essentially makes a scan of that object. Some use cases where LiDAR are used outside of for example, the iPhones, for mapping the Amazon forest, right? The Amazon forest was used with big drones and big planes, which flew over the forest and used LiDAR to actually capture it and figure out, where's the floor? Is there any items trapped in the forest that we can't see with our eyes? And when that was done, that costed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to do. But now, like I mentioned, the back of my phone has, a pretty simple scanner that I can use. Zach, do you have any objects in your inventory from either Chris or myself?
Yeah. No, I have a bunch actually. The one of the schools we worked with actually created an environment that was like an art environment, and they used all LiDAR images.
Let me just
If
let me describe real quickly why you would use a LiDAR versus like taking a photo. So, and Zach, if you want to share your screen and optimize the screen for video.
Yeah, just give me a minute. I'll share once I have it ready.
So what Pablo showed you is on the back, what is it, Pablo? iPhone 12 and above started to include
Yeah, iPhone 12 and
LiDAR.
above.
Yeah, so if you have an iPhone 12 or above, I think the Android phones have them now as well. But this is pretty extraordinary. This is the thing that's on top of a self-driving car for Google. That thing that spins around is a LiDAR. This used to be a $300,000 piece of equipment. Now it comes for free on your new iPhones. And what it does is it scans an image to pull out the exact granularity and likeness of that image. So for example, we did a project that Pablo was one of the leads on where we scanned some graffiti in Miami, in Wynwood, was it called Wynwood Walls community of
Yeah.
This is a famous community in Miami, Florida, where some famous graffiti artists went in and they did beautiful artwork all over the buildings and all over the cement walls and everything. Now you could take a photo of that and bring it into virtual reality, no problem. You could take a photo, right? But when you're in virtual reality and you go up to the wall or the photo of the wall, it's a photo, so it's flat. You can't see any details. However, what Pablo did was he actually took LiDAR images of the graffiti, and therefore you could see the granularity in the cement. So here we go. So this is an actual image that Pablo literally walked up to this thing with his phone. It's about 6 foot tall, and he scanned this whole wall. But if he zooms in on the wall, you'll see that it's a little hard to see on the desktop, but if in virtual reality, you can see the actual divots in the cement. You can see chips of spray paint. You can see, all these details that you can't capture with a photograph. And it really feels like you're standing next to a cement wall where there's graffiti on it. The grass down there has depth and detail. So it's really an advanced feature, and it's extraordinary because this used to be extremely expensive for this type of equipment, very technical and very complicated. Now, Pablo went out there with his phone, scanned the whole wall, brought it into some special software. We'll have to have you do an information session, Pablo, on how you specifically bring this stuff into VR. But he captured this image right on his phone, and then he just imported it into his virtual reality environment. And so now you have the ability to take physical objects in the real world and bring it in. Or you could, I scanned my cat. Obviously the cat was sleeping because it has to be still. Sam and I love cats, so we have cats. You could scan your cat and literally bring in an image of your cat that looks very realistic, a 3D image, not a photograph. So these are some of the special features you have, in the software. I think from a time perspective, we're probably out of time because we want to keep this to an hour. That was extraordinary, guys. I mean, Zach, thank you very much. Zach, how many months ago was it that you started to learn the software to get that advanced? Because you and Pablo are our most advanced resources in these special features. How long ago was it that, how long do you suggest it would take someone to get very proficient in learning this?
Well, to be very proficient, it does take just a lot of hours, but to just get the hang of it, I mean, it just takes, a few hours each week to just get used to all the controls and learn all the different things. To be kind of a master, I'm actually like one of the top 10 in terms of hours of anyone in the world on this platform.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I've been told by Chris, actually, he's like, Zach, you're in the top 10 of users. But so I've been doing this for like a year. I've put in hundreds of hours, but you only need hundreds of hours to be able to figure out the problem right away and be like, oh, I know how I can get past this or fix this small little bug. But to just get the hang of the controls, just a few hours, a week. And by the end of the month, you should be pretty used to everything there is. You just have to push yourself to be curious about all the different functions, because we barely scratch the surface on the kind of special features that they have. And if you just go in, look at all the options that different objects have, the different special function IFX that there are, you'll just keep learning new things, and they keep adding new things. I mean, every update, I'm like, oh, cool. There's a new special function I get to learn.
Yeah, and that's, Zach has he has intellectual curiosity. And as he gets into these environments, that intellectual curiosity keeps him motivated to where he keeps learning more and more by discovery. And so all we wanted to do with this video was just show you this window into the art of the possible of what you can do in these environments, because you may not even know that this stuff even exists, right? Same thing with Pablo, extremely intellectually curious and creatively curious. Same thing with Samantha. So when you get in these environments, you start to realize, holy cow, there's some really powerful tools in here that I'm unlocking. And then your curiosity gets away, takes hold of you, and you just want to learn more and more. And that's when your brain will just be like a sponge and you'll just eat the stuff up. Zach probably spent hundreds of hours in here, but it probably didn't feel like hundreds of hours because he was having fun with it. I mean, we get on calls with him and Pablo, and they're like, hey, there's this new feature added. You won't believe what you can do now. I mean, it's like you said, we showed you like half of 1% of what you can do. But we just wanted to give you that glimpse into this window of all this stuff that's out there. And again, nobody was programming code. No one had to learn a computer programming language to do this. And you can create whatever you want. The goal of this session was, you can realize here, anything your head thinks of, you can duplicate in virtual reality and bring to life. And that's why we feel like it's a creative art form, an expression, and also individuals like Samantha, who's an art major, can really flourish in these environments. Because if one thing you'll find is you give a technical person access to these tools, and they get in there and they start making too much stuff happening because they're excited that there's all these features. They want to show you all this cool stuff that they can do in there. And you need someone who's got a little bit more of a creative mindset, who understands feng shui and art and color contrast and things, to come in and say, listen, we're making too much stimulation here. We're over-engineering it. Great, these are cool features that the tech people want to put in to show all this animation, but it's too much. I feel overwhelmed. If you're really going to try to bring someone into this environment and make them feel like they're understanding the story, they're experiencing the story, they're following a narrative, there's a rhyme and reason to this thing, it makes sense to them, we have to destimulate some of this. We have to take out some of the bells and whistles. We can have different points where we add some wow factor, but we have to keep it balanced. And that's what we suggest, is when you put your team together, get some real strong technical resources that understand and want to dive into these features and functions, but complement that person with someone who's artistic and creative and who is a good communicator and can tell stories, because that's such an important skill set in here. Because just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it with the features and functions. So you need someone to come in there and map that out for you as well. So listen, Zach, Pablo, thank you very much. Sam, as always, is my co-host on these sessions. Thank you very much. We hope that you enjoyed this session. It gave you a glimpse. Now, some of you are probably asking, like, wait, stop, how do I learn more? Our suggestion is do it the same way Pablo and Zach and Samantha did it. They got in there and they started experimenting. Don't be afraid to fail. It's okay if you make a mistake. It's digital real estate. You can just delete it and start over. Just go out there and experiment. But within days, in hours and days, you'll start to get proficient in it. And you'll start to realize, just like you got used to how to use your iPhone to post a TikTok video, and when you first got in, it was a foreign language to you, it didn't make any sense. Now it makes sense. This software will be that same way. And then think about the skill set you now have. Because as brands and companies and businesses, as nonprofit organizations, as others want to convert their websites into these experiences, you are going to be able to create some amazing experiences for them. You'll become relevant. You'll become employable in those environments by learning this skill set. And that's why we're doing this competition, is to get you exposed to this. So have fun with it. Bring your sustainable development goals to life. I think what we'll do is Zach has recorded a more detailed video recording of him going into this environment and manipulating things in a more kind of tutorial format versus a discussion format like this was. So Zach will post that as well on our YouTube channel. It'll be information session 8A and 8B. and we'll call it Engage Platform 201, because Chris Madsen did 101. Well, maybe this dialogue was 101, and the video recording, Zach, that you have as a tutorial will be 201. And of course, go into our Facebook community and you can post messages to Zach, and perhaps he'll be able to, if he sees a lot of the same questions being asked, he can put some answers to those questions. But be resourceful on your own. There's lots of YouTube videos. If you did a Google search or you went to YouTube and you did a search on Engage VR content creator, I'm sure you'd find other tutorials and other videos. So you have a lot of resources out there. The other positive thing is, notice Zach did this all on his desktop today. So if you don't have your headset yet, it doesn't mean that you can't get started in being very creative. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the session.